Someone says something to you right to your face, in front of other people. It's not loud, not dramatic, just a few sharp words. But somehow, it hits harder than a slap. Your chest tightens, your face feels hot, and your mind goes completely blank. You don't respond, you don't defend yourself, you just stand there, forcing a small smile, pretending it didn't matter. Maybe you laugh it off, maybe you look away, maybe you tell yourself, it's not a big deal, just let it go. But later, it doesn't go. That moment follows you home. You replay it in your head again and again, what they said, how people reacted, what you should have said instead, in the shower, in bed, in silence. You imagine the perfect comeback, the calm response, the version of you who didn't freeze. And the worst part? You're not even angry at them anymore. You're angry at yourself. Why didn't I say anything? Why did I just stand there? Why do I always go quiet when it matters most? If you've ever felt this, you're not alone. Almost everyone has lived through a moment like that where their voice disappeared exactly when they needed it most. And once you understand why that happens, everything starts to change. Here's the truth no one ever told you. You didn't stay silent because you're weak. You didn't freeze because you lack confidence. And you didn't go quiet because they were somehow stronger than you. You froze because your brain was caught off guard. In moments like that, your mind isn't calmly thinking of clever response, it's trying to process what just happened. Was that an insult? Did they really mean it? How should I react without making things worse? All of that happens in a split second, and before you can organize your thoughts, the moment is gone. Silence, in that situation, is not failure. It's your brain choosing the safest option when it doesn't yet have a strategy. Because no one ever taught you what to do in that exact moment. And once you understand this, something shifts. The shame starts to disappear. You stop blaming yourself. You realize the problem was never your personality, it was simply the lack of a clear response system. And the moment you learn that system, you stop freezing. Rude people are not random. They don't walk into a room and treat everyone the same. If you pay close attention, you'll notice something interesting. They can be surprisingly polite, even charming, with certain people, and then completely different with others. That difference is not an accident. They scan the room, they observe, and consciously or unconsciously, they look for someone who seems less likely to push back, someone who hesitates, someone who avoids conflict, someone who tries to keep the peace. And once they find that person, they test them. Think about your own experience. Have you ever noticed that someone who is sharp or dismissive with you somehow laughs and jokes easily with others? With them, they're relaxed. With you, they're slightly more aggressive, more sarcastic, more disrespectful. That's a pattern. For example, in a workplace, a person might never speak rudely to a confident colleague who responds directly. But with someone quieter, they might make small cutting remarks, jokes that don't feel like jokes at all. Not because they hate you more, but because they believe they can get away with it. In other words, it's not about who you are, it's about what they think they can do to you. And once you see this clearly, you stop taking it personally and start seeing it for what it really is. A calculated behavior, not a coincidence. What's actually happening in these moments has a name: social probing. It's a subtle psychological test, not loud, not obvious, but very intentional. A person throws out a small rude comment, a sarcastic remark, or a dismissive tone, and then they watch you closely. They're not focused on what they said, they're focused on how you react. That brief moment right after their words land, that's the test. Your face, your body language, your eyes, all of it becomes data. If you flinch, they read it as this person can be shaken. If you laugh it off, they read it as this person won't push back. If you stumble over your words, they read it as, this is easy. And here's the key. They don't need a big reaction. Even the smallest signal is enough. Why do they do this? Because it helps them map your boundaries. It tells them how far they can go next time. Human behavior is adaptive wants. They learn you won't resist. They become bolder, more frequent, more direct. And this is where most people unknowingly fail the test. Not because they're weak, but because they don't realize it's a test in the first place. So they smile, stay quiet, or try to be polite, thinking they're keeping the peace. But what they're actually doing is sending a message: this is acceptable. And once that message is received, the behavior doesn't stop, it escalates. Right after a rude comment is made, there is a small, almost invisible moment that determines everything. This is what we call the reaction window. It only lasts a few seconds, but in those seconds, the other person is watching you closely. And most people, without realizing it, respond in ways that actually make things worse. The first common reaction is nervous, smiling, or laughing it off. You try to keep things light, avoid tension, act like it didn't bother you. But to them, this signals one thing: no resistance. It tells them they can do it again. The second is over-explaining or defending yourself. You rush to clarify, justify, or correct what they said. But instead of gaining respect, you end up giving them control of the conversation because now you're reacting on their terms. The third is freezing completely. Your mind goes blank, your body stiffens, and you say nothing. This feels like the safest option in the moment, but to them, it reads as uncertainty, and uncertainty invites more testing. None of these reactions are your fault, they're automatic. But once you become aware of this window, you start to see it differently. Because that tiny moment, it's not a trap. It's your first opportunity to take control. Now, let's move into the first technique, and it's surprisingly simple. When someone says something rude, sharp, or disrespectful, instead of reacting immediately, you pause. Let a brief silence sit in the air. Then look at them calmly and say, "Can you say that again?" That's it. No anger, no sarcasm, no extra words. On the surface, it sounds harmless, but psychologically, it's extremely powerful. Most rude comments are designed to be quick-delivered fast, then gone before anyone can fully process them. They rely on speed. They rely on the moment passing. When you ask them to repeat it, you remove that escape. Now they have to say it again, slower, clearer, in front of everyone, and something changes. The second time, it doesn't sound clever anymore. It sounds exactly like what it is: unnecessary, mean, and deliberate. Even they can hear it. The confidence drops, the smirk fades, the room shifts. Because now, it's no longer just a comment. It's a choice they have to publicly stand behind. For example, imagine someone says, "Wow, you're actually presenting today? Didn't expect that." Instead of laughing it off, you pause, look at them, and calmly say, "Can you say that again?" Now they're forced to repeat it. And suddenly, it feels awkward even for them. You didn't attack, you didn't defend, you simply held the moment still long enough for the truth to reveal itself. And most of the time, that's all it takes. There's a different kind of rudeness that's harder to confront, the kind hidden behind a smile, the just joking comment, the subtle jab that makes everyone slightly uncomfortable, but gives the speaker an easy escape if you react. This is where the second technique comes in. Name the pattern, not the moment. Instead of responding to that one comment, you calmly say, "I've noticed you say things like that quite often." Simple, neutral, no emotion. But what this does psychologically is powerful. You are no longer reacting to a single incident, you are framing it as a repeated behavior. And that changes everything. A one-time comment can be dismissed. A pattern cannot. Now, they're not just dealing with what they said, but who they appear to be. And here's why that matters. People care deeply about how they are perceived. No one wants to be seen as the person who always says things like that. That label carries weight. It suggests awareness, memory, and judgment, all coming from you without aggression. For example, if someone makes a sarcastic jab like, "You're always a bit slow with these things, huh?" Instead of defending yourself, you simply say, "I've noticed you tend to say things like that." Suddenly, the focus shifts. It's no longer about you, it's about them. You didn't argue. You didn't escalate. You just made their behavior visible. And once something is seen clearly, it becomes much harder to continue. Most people think the only options in a rude situation are to fight back or stay quiet. But there's a third option that completely changes the dynamic without aggression. It's called redirecting. Instead of responding to the comment itself, you shift your attention to the person behind it. You look at them calmly and say, "You seem a bit stressed. Is everything okay?" Notice what just happened. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't attack them. You didn't even acknowledge the insult directly. You simply moved the focus away from the words and onto their emotional state. And this is where the power lies. Because now, they lose control of the frame. The moment is no longer about judging you. It's about them being observed. Psychologically, this creates a disruption. Their intention was to put you on the defensive, but instead, they are now the one being questioned. From here, only two outcomes are possible. First, they soften, they back off. Because it's hard to continue being rude when someone is calmly showing concern. It makes their behavior feel out of place, even to themselves. Second, they continue being rude. But now, it becomes obvious to everyone watching. Because while you remain composed and reasonable, they appear increasingly aggressive and unreasonable. Either way, you win. You didn't escalate. You didn't lose control. You simply shifted the game and made them play on your terms. Here's something that changes everything once you truly understand it. Most rude behavior is not about you. It might feel personal in the moment, the tone, the words, the timing, but in many cases, you are simply the nearest target, not the real cause. In psychology, this is often explained through projection. People carry stress, frustration, insecurity, even embarrassment, and instead of dealing with it directly, it leaks out onto others, especially onto those they perceive as safe. Someone having a bad day, feeling overlooked, or struggling internally may release that tension through sarcasm, criticism, or dismissive comments. Not because you deserve it, but because you're there, and they believe there will be no consequences. Understanding this doesn't mean you tolerate it. It means you stop internalizing it. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start seeing something is off with them. That shift is powerful, because the moment you stop taking it personally, their words lose weight. They no longer define you, they reveal them, and when you see it clearly, you respond differently. Not from insecurity, but from control. Some rude behavior isn't meant to happen in private, it's designed for an audience. In these situations, the goal is not just to put you down, but to do it in front of others. To get a reaction, to get a laugh, to turn the moment into a performance where you are the target. And that's exactly where this technique becomes powerful. Instead of reacting emotionally or trying to win the crowd, you stay calm, look directly at them, and say, "That was an interesting thing to say out loud." Short, controlled, no anger. But what this does is subtle and incredibly effective. You shift the focus away from what was said to the fact that they chose to say it publicly. You make the audience aware of that choice. And once people become aware, they stop passively laughing, they start evaluating. This is called audience awareness. The moment you highlight the behavior, the crowd is no longer with them, they're watching them. The dynamic flips. The performer becomes the one being judged. For example, if someone makes a sarcastic remark about you during a meeting to get a laugh, instead of forcing a smile, you calmly say, "That's an interesting thing to say out loud." Now the room goes quiet. Not because you attacked, but because you revealed the moment. You didn't fight for attention. You redirected it. And once the spotlight turns, the performance usually ends. There is a form of response that most people misunderstand, and it might be the most powerful one on this list. Silence. But not all silence is the same. There is weak silence, the kind where you look away, force a smile, shift your body, and try to disappear from the moment. That silence communicates discomfort, uncertainty, even submission, and then there is controlled silence. When someone says something disrespectful, you don't speak, but you also don't retreat. You stay still. You look directly at them. Your face is calm, your posture steady, your eyes level, no fidgeting, no nervous energy, just presence. And then, you hold it. This kind of silence is not empty, it's pressure. Because now, they don't know how to read you. There's no reaction to adjust to, no signal to guide their next move. And that uncertainty creates discomfort fast. Most people cannot handle more than a few seconds of that. So they start filling the space themselves. They laugh awkwardly. They backtrack. They say things like, "I was just joking," or "Relax, it's not that serious." Without you saying a single word, they begin to defend themselves. Think about that. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, and yet they collapse their own position. That's the effect of controlled silence. It removes your energy from the situation while forcing them to sit with theirs. And in many cases, that's enough to make the entire moment fall apart on its own. There will be moments when you've done everything right. You stayed calm, you didn't react emotionally, you held your ground, and still, the other person keeps going. That's when the final technique comes in. You look at them, steady and composed, and say, "I'm not going to continue this conversation if it stays like this." And then you mean it. No explaining, no arguing, no waiting for their response. You simply withdraw your attention. You disengage, fully and quietly. This is not weakness, this is control. Because rude behavior feeds on one thing, your engagement. Every reaction you give, even a perfect one, keeps the interaction alive. It tells them there is still a game being played. But the moment you step out, the game ends. And here's the truth most people never realize. You cannot lose a game you refuse to play. That's real power. All of these techniques were never really about shutting down rude people. They were about building a version of you that doesn't get shaken in the first place. A version of you that doesn't replay moments at night, wishing you had done something differently. Because now you know exactly what to do. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't rush, doesn't panic, doesn't chase validation. It simply stays grounded, calm, and in control of one thing, the only thing that has ever truly been yours, your response. And when you master that, something changes. People feel it, not because you say anything, but because you no longer need to. So here's the question for you. Which moment still stays in your mind, the one where you wish you had responded differently? And which of these techniques are you going to use the next time it happens?